And we're live. Welcome everybody to another
Oh,
edition of Deconversion Stories. Today I am talking with Living Free, or Free from the Way is her Twitter handle. If you do want to follow her, I do have a link in the description below. Oh, hang on. Now my phone's going all crazy here because I forgot to mute the volume on there. And as you can hear, there's a bit of a delay. But anyways, so today, what I want to talk to you about, I guess, is how you found your way out of your faith, and the journey it was, and what kind of led you to being an atheist activist today.
Yeah, well, I'm not totally an atheist activist, but I am totally out of, I believe in a deity, but it's like whatever you want to believe. It's like it doesn't matter. And part of that is because what I was involved with was called the Way International, and they were always arguing about specifically what the beliefs were, and they were not Trinitarian, so they would go and prove this against each other. So I kind of got burned out on all the arguments about all this stuff was going on. And being a therapist, I'm more involved in, I kind of like connecting to people on more of like a humanist level, like you were saying. Right. So the Way International is very, very, very Bible-based, strict. They kind of believe that we have the only answer. The churches are all horrible, but we have the whole answer. And the whole answer is about, we know the Bible better than anybody else. And so I kind of got burned out on all the Bible stuff because all it was people bashing everybody over the head. So,
and it's funny because the way you mentioned that they have the right, interpretation as opposed to everybody else is pretty much what all the other ones say too. So it's kind of ironic.
Oh, it's true. Yeah, everybody's into arguing about, I'm better than you. Lately, the biggest thing I've been looking at lately is about nonviolent versus violent communications, which is a different way of looking at healthy psychological versus demonizing everybody else conversations. And I found that fascinating. But yeah, and the Way International, and I actually was kicked out. I didn't even voluntarily leave.
Wait, they kicked you out?
Yeah. Oh, yes. What they do is they tell you, you know the Bible better than anybody else. But then I was married to this guy, and he didn't go with the flow. So I was supposed to fix him, and they didn't like that. So it was like, okay, well, you didn't get him to look perfect for us. So you guys are on a 6-month probationary period. But unlike the Jehovah Witnesses who kindly let you sit in the back of the room, they won't even talk to you. It's like, you got the Bible, you know what to do. So actually I was on it twice. So the first time I came back like a good little sheep with my husband, and I was so happy because I'd been in there 15 years. I was actually in the leadership, trained to be in the leadership. But then they kicked me out of that because I guess I wasn't psychopathic enough to because they truly, you had to be really narcissistic and think you're better than everybody else. And so the first time I came back, and then we got kicked out the second time, I divorced my husband over it thinking I was coming back. And then I started to turn around when I was hearing people say, well, everybody that leaves here is evil. And the ones that first left were the ones that were really after everybody. Because in the 1980s, that's when 2/3 of the group left, and I stayed. I didn't get out until 1996, which is really bizarre. So I just started doing my own thing. I divorced my husband, and then I realized, wait a minute, these people won't even talk to me if I won't divorce all the people that I've met since I've been out, which have been very helpful. So it was kind of like seeing the kindness of people outside of my circle is really what started me turning away from it.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, it was interesting. I got out, and basically what we were taught, and I've got a video on my website that I need to work on, where this woman literally said, so-and-so was killed in a plane crash, but she wasn't killed in the plane crash because she was with a famous senator they were trying to knock out. She was killed because her father left our group, and God no longer protects them. So we were basically taught that, we're not telling you you're going to hell, but you're going to slowly be tortured by the devil, and then you will die in a long, slow, agonizing way because you've left us. Yeah, it was pretty sick. Yeah.
Wow.
And yeah,
that strikes me as, like you said, like almost a type of psychopathy going on there.
Oh, and many, many, many of the groups are. After I got out, it took me 5 years before I started addressing it because I just thought I was a terrible person. And then I got into one of those warning to anybody, if you're ever in a cult and then you think, well, these spinoff people that were in my group are going to help me, run screaming and yelling. Because basically what it is it's a group of people trying to recreate what the other person had. In other words, you got one narcissist running the group, and then another one leaves and creates their own. And there was a guy, there was a guy named Victor Barnard, who I was like in this group where we went knocking on doors together. And I just didn't feel comfortable with him. It was like he was just narcissistically controlling everything, but I didn't know that back then, because that's one other thing. Therapists are evil. So I have turned evil. Because now, and I work with people that have schizophrenia, all those terrible things, and homeless people. We try to get them housing, all that kind of stuff. So that's just a horrible thing to be nice to those people. But that's what I like to do. So this guy Victor Barnard, yeah, this is interesting. So Victor Barnard was superior to me, and he started a spinoff group. And what he did was, the guy that started our group, Victor Paul Werwell, he was probably screwing about 1,000 women a year using
what?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, but Victor was even better. He became a pedophile. Wow. And he had his own little house, and he got all these people in the spinoff group that had left the way. And that's the problem, is people get out of one group and they just want that security.
Yeah.
Which is interesting, because I was talking to an ex-JW guy who got out in 1981. He used to work at Bethel, which is one of their big places. And he got out in 1981, and he says sometimes he still misses that. There's like this delirious thing, like everything's happy, and it's not like reality that a lot of these groups have together. So Victor Barnard got out, and he went up and found he bought his own piece of land, and he had all these mothers turn over their 13-year-old daughters, and he probably molested about 8 or 9 of them, and he's now in a prison in Michigan, I think. So when I look back,
really?
Oh, we had some, yeah. So the Victor Werwell guy, and if you look up his stuff, he was, he got his doctorate from some weird place. But he would teach everybody that, you can really get blessed by God if you screw me, and I won't, and your husband doesn't need to know about this.
That sounds very Mormonish almost.
Yes, except you don't marry him. You just kind of, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And this is really handy. Then if you get pregnant, they're okay. They figured out, abortion is fine. It's not really murder because the baby's not alive till it breathes. So yeah, just go have an abortion. But we believe in, yeah, it was just really, so that kind of, my beliefs really got twisted around, because like the spinoff group said, we're pro-life. And then I finally come to the point where it really doesn't matter what all these beliefs are. Like right now, I didn't go to church for a long time, and right now I hang out with a bunch of Episcopalians. And hey, if you're an atheist, you're welcome to come too, because we don't care what you believe. So which I really enjoy. Oh yeah.
Kind of I guess they kind of say that, but then you come to their services or whatever, and I guess they're hoping that maybe you might change your mind.
Yeah, well, not going to happen, but whatever. Because I don't believe half of what they believe anyway. So, I mean, and to me, it's just a personal thing. And I'm a live and let live person, and I'm really glad if people I don't understand a lot about atheism, but I think it's great that people do that. I mean, and if somebody's like another religion, I just look more at what people do with their lives, because the evil, I don't think it comes from the belief so much as the actions of these people. Like this guy that screwed like 1,000 women, or the other guy that just screwed like 12 or 13 kids. And then, I think it's really just how people live their lives that's more important than what any beliefs are anyway.
Well, there is an old saying that, good people will do good things, bad people will do bad things, but it takes something like a belief system like religion or something other or similar that makes otherwise good people do bad things.
Yeah, in a way, yeah. And which is funny because I've dated one guy and he was a pagan and he said, "Oh, trust me, there's a lot of drama in that too, just like any church."
I used to be one too, so I fully
Oh,
understand it.
really? Which I thought was interesting. So it's kind of like I just think it's good to be free, just to do what we want. Um, I mean, I'm hanging out with this church right just because they have homeless ministries and that kind of thing. But I don't like to get too involved in the politics because it just reminds me too much. Even at work now, I've pretty much divorced myself from the corporate stuff because the corporate stuff is, oh, yeah. It
I know all about the corporate stuff.
Oh yeah, it's all like when I finally realized that, and that's why I started thinking of doing some of my own business things. Basically, I went to school about 10 years ago. I graduated to be a therapist, and everybody there was like, "Why don't you go into private practice?" Then I realized, see, we don't have health insurance in the United States. It's worth anything. You have to have a job that's hooked to your health insurance. So I started working at this mental health center. And then I started realizing I'm having all the same issues that I had when I was in the way. What is it that I need to work out? And basically, what I needed to work out was that I'm not the problem. It's the system, it's the belief systems of all these groups. That's where the problem
Sure.
is. It's not with me as an individual. And so I still work there, but I'm not trying to climb any corporate ladder. And I'd rather just get out and share with people like my experiences, how I got out of, sorry, let me turn that off. How I got out of the situations that I was into, and that I can do what I want now, which is really basically, I don't know that I'm a total anarchist, but I do believe.
I don't know. I sense a hint.
I consider myself politically a populist. In other words, against anything with a ton of money that tries to. Our government's a disaster right now. It's
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And I've heard Canada's not that much better in some ways, but
Well, I still think we're leaps and bounds above what you guys have been stuck with down there.
oh my gosh. But we've been actually, the more you get to learn about it, the scarier it is. And then you realize that ever since World War II, we've been corporately owned by all kinds of CIA and all kinds of other operatives. And it's really scary. But at the same time, I think of the people, I believe that, people being free, using critical thinking, and each person doing what they want and not trying to force stuff on other people, I think that's where freedom comes.
Yeah, for sure. And some might even argue the other side of the coin. Well, I have the freedom to express myself religiously, and of course they do. But to try to like almost, I don't want to say violently, but adamantly try to push beliefs down someone's throat, I don't agree with.
Right, because we're all different people and we're all, we all have different personalities. And one of the, this was interesting, this whole thing on violent versus nonviolent, because as in psychiatry, whatever, psychology or whatever, we're taught, that we're all individuals and not to judge other people. But then there's this, and I can't remember the name of the guy, I just started listening to some of his stuff, and I got a book on nonviolent versus violent communication, and what he talks about is, like, for instance, at work, there's this boss that really a lot of people are pissed off at, and they call her a micromanager. And it's like, okay, so if I don't get along with her, just calling her a micromanager is about her and it's not about me. But if I say that, her behaviors of wondering when I clocked in and out instead of what the quality of my work was, that doesn't work for me. I like to be more autonomous in my job. I have a good work ethic. I'm not like ripping the company off. But so when somebody tries to like pick at me a lot, that doesn't work for me. And that's just more stating, about me instead of like blaming the institution. Because this guy in New Zealand, he had a big manifesto about how horrible all the institutions were. And I'm not saying there's not a lot of corruption there, but the best way to address it is to say, well, there's good and bad in everyone. There's good and bad in every institution. I mean, there'll be, there's the Catholic Church might have a few good people in it, and then they've got a lot of child molesters in it. But
oh yeah,
there's just kind of good and bad and everything. And we're getting away from that whole black and white and judgmental. And then, like I heard one person said that I thought was great about this whole thing. If somebody really believes that they need to kill 50 people to get their cause done, well, then volunteer to be the first one and take one for the team. And I thought it was because no one has the right to take anybody else's life. And that sounds extreme, but it's the same thing in religion. Anybody that tells you you have to believe what we do or come join us and your life is going to be great because you're doing what we want, that's power and control. And the problem with the religions is they take this God name and put it on there, and everybody's looking for a God, so they come to that. But then people also, I see a lot of that, like with the whole Michael Jackson thing now. Everybody's like making him this big God because he was a creative genius. Well, you can be a creative genius and still have problems in your life.
Absolutely. I mean, just recently they released that little movie about him.
Oh yeah.
And so many things were revealed in that movie. And now the display they have of his stuff, I think it was the Smithsonian, they've removed some of the articles because of this.
I don't know if you should totally remove it, maybe from like a children's view, but I watched some of that, The Leaving Neverland, and the thing that if you watch any of it and you listen to these guys, they will tell you, Michael Jackson helped me. So you're looking at, that's part of healthy. You're looking at this big healthy part in one hand, of this genius. And in the other hand, he did molest you. And so they're not like denying that it helped their career and the guy's a great choreographer. But then it wasn't even about Michael Jackson. It was all about how these creeps come in and convince you little kids to do stuff. And Oprah got on there and says, we're transcending Michael Jackson. And that's what's sad, to see people attacking him going, well, we don't think he did anything and they're against it. And that's not even what it's about. Yeah, he happened to be the perpetrator of these two guys. But the biggest point is that like 1 out of every 6 males, at least in the United States, is a victim of child molestation. And that's what needs to be addressed. And that's what Oprah was on there addressing. But sure. Because that's like, people are making Michael Jackson into a god. And that's what happens in a lot of these groups. It's like,
oh yeah, absolutely. That kind of celebrity can almost elevate you to that status, even when you're still alive sometimes.
Right. So I can see how the whole concept of God is like scary, because, people, that's like something that controls you. But the reality is, if you join a cult, they don't want you to like have your own idea of who God is and do that. They want you to do what they want you to do. So they just kind of take the label and say, we represent God. Well, who are you to say you represent God more? And like you said, who are you to say there even is a God? Which I think is and I'm glad a lot of people are able to get out that way, like with that freedom. And I think it's a personal decision. It doesn't matter what people think, as long as you don't try to control people. So yeah, I definitely don't like institutionalized religion. It's like corporations, and the more evil is because they are saying that you should like worship them, and they put the name God on it. But I mean, I don't know,
because it's convenient.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just saying, because it's convenient. That's why they slap the name God on there. And then, of course, it absolves it from being somehow wrong or immoral or whatever the case may be.
Right.
As long as it's got God on the label, it's all good.
Yeah, kind of like we take this label here and do that. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So you're not really a full atheist then?
No, I'm a deist. Like, I have like what I believe in, but I don't think that it's anybody else's. It's kind of like, it works for me kind of to Like, I think there's something that's a power that's stronger than myself. Kind of like the 12-step thing. I don't know if you, that is more like what I'm at. I mean, I just believe that sometimes something comes up that's outside of myself that helps guide me. I don't know exactly what it is, and it's not the same for anybody else. It's just worked for me. And so it's not
Right.
anything I wouldn't want to force on anybody else, if that
Right.
makes sense.
Another friend of mine has said something similar to that, and I've kind of well, I asked him. I said, "Well, how do you tell the difference between it being something other than yourself and not just being yourself, ultimately dealing with whatever it is?"
And it could be. Yeah.
Right.
What did he say? That would be interesting.
Well, sure. I mean, I just think, if you're having something that's going on in your life and your success in whatever it is, and you're attributing it to some higher power, I think you're selling yourself short of what you're actually capable of. You know
Well,
what I
that's a
mean?
good point. Yeah. Except, I'm not capable of making a lot of coincidences happening because I don't control anybody. Yeah.
No, but they could still be coincidences.
True, true, true. Yeah.
Because coincidences happen every day. One time I had a talk about somebody, and I said, if something were to happen, if something is like a 1 in a million chance of happening, you got to think of it a little differently, because how many people are there on the planet? There's
Oh,
7.6 billion people now, or something like that, some ridiculous number. And if 1 in a million things happens every day, then that's over 7,500 times a day that 1 in a million thing happens. So there could be coincidences going on left, right, and center that we don't even know. And we often, for whatever reason, I guess it's some psychological thing, but we often count all the hits and forget all the misses.
hmm,
You know what I mean? So there's also these sorts of things to consider.
absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And all the crazy. I guess it's just I don't really have an interest in it and like
Hmm.
thinking to the depth of all of that stuff because there's just so much, and I'm old and I only got so much energy and I'm working on I still have about 80 more pounds to lose. I lost about 50 and I about 80
Oh, good for
more.
you.
Yeah, and the interesting thing in it is that and I do believe, like you said, like one of the things that I just did lately was learn about what's called EMDR therapy. And it's based on,
What is that?
it's kind of like um, instead of sitting and talking forever about your traumas to process, because our brains they heal themselves.
Sure. Yeah.
So, I mean, you're right. I mean, we can't sell ourselves short. But I mean, I couldn't create the world, but that doesn't matter. But anyway,
No,
but
we
our
could
brain,
simulate one on a computer.
oh yeah, so something, but it doesn't matter anyway. But our brains heal themselves, and then we've got our right brain where it's like our emotional, and the left brain is like more logical. And a lot of times, like I could sit in therapy and I could talk logically about how I'm a worthy person, blah 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 blah. But here I am still trying to kiss up to people at work because when it comes down to it, I still had this fear, like, oh, and it was stuff from when I was a kid that that I was worth. Because my dad, he's actually an army chaplain, so yeah, I'm a
Oh,
PK,
wow.
so yeah, and there was and I saw all the evil there. I mean, sitting and bitching about everybody in the church. So yeah, and I wanted nothing to do with that. So I joined a different group. It's kind of like marrying somebody that we think is not like our parents, but then we
Hmm.
end up with the same thing because until you work it out in yourself. But anyway, the EMDR is like um you like take the trauma and you take what your negative belief is about it. Like I was just working with a guy today. His most biggest trauma is that he's alone because he was left by the babysitter. So he believes that he's alone and instead of believing that, he's okay as he is as a person.
Hmm.
So he'll like remember that incident and then you go, okay, on scale of 1 to 10, how bad is it? It's like a 9 or a 10. And then you think about it and just follow somebody's hand moving across, like you kind of wave like this, going back and forth like so many times, and just let your eyes follow it. And then
Sounds
it
like
takes,
hypnotism.
well, actually, it's more like dreaming, but you're awake. Oh, there's no hypnotism to it. No.
Okay.
And I've heard that works, but I never studied that. This is more like you're awake and you think
Uh,
about it.
on the
And
fence.
then your brain kind of processes it out because the brain will heal itself. So I did a little bit of that, and in about 4 sessions, when I was practicing as I was learning in it, I came to realize I just remember things, and it came back to me that, yeah, I did all this, and then I was running away and I was binging because I didn't feel love from my parents, but he was mean to me, and then I started realizing binging isn't working for me, and then I was like, screw all that. Then I realized, that I'm believing what they're telling me at work, and I realized it was a bunch of crap, and it all came from within me. But what it does is it's kind of like, it takes about 50 sessions of therapy and puts it down to about like 1. And it, because you just think about it. Because a lot of times, like when you're dreaming, you're processing things, but we don't have as much control when we're dreaming because we're asleep. So it's kind of like the opposite of hypnotism, I guess. But I've heard that hypnotism works. I just haven't studied.
I haven't dug a whole lot into that either. There is such a thing as called lucid dreaming, where you can actually you set up something like a signal that is common that you've noticed is common in your dreams. Like, let's say you're an outdoorsy person, and a lot of your dreams you're walking through the woods and you look around and you see the moon. Well, you could use the moon as a trigger to tell you that, oh, hey, I'm in a dream. Now I can take control. And it's a process called lucid dreaming. Apparently, it takes a bit to get the master, but it does work. I've been able to do it myself a few times.
That sounds cool. Yeah, like you have an idea before you go to sleep and you come up with an answer. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I don't think necessarily that's what dreams are for. According to neuroscience, anyways, dreams really are just flushing out the waste from your day through scenarios.
Right, and EMDR flushes out. We talk about clearing out the traumas. In other words, like when a woman's raped, she kind of goes to another place, but all those horrible things are still inside of her. And then you just kind of have to flush it out. And the EMDR just flushes it a lot faster than painfully sitting and talking about every detail of all the gory stuff that happened. I mean, the brain wants to get it out faster. Mm-hmm. So that's cool. But
yeah, absolutely.
But it's just helped me a lot because, and I've even discovered like people that have schizophrenia and they have all these weird different ideas about what's reality. Mm-hmm. They're hearing these horrible things, and if they can go, wait a minute, but when this devil or whatever they think is, like some people see, like one woman told me Kanye was stalking her house and all. But if she would be willing to say, okay, so what are you really believing? You're really believing that Kanye hates you. And you don't argue. I mean, if she wants to think that's real, that's fine. But she has some kind of weird belief on that, like, I'm such a horrible person that I deserve to have him stalking me. And just get her to the point where she just like says, I don't care if he's here or not. I don't care. And then it heals the trauma part of it. And then, I mean, you can't control it. That's what the bizarre things.
Yeah, well, you can't control. Well, when we say something, I was going to say you can't control someone's delusion, but there are different levels of delusion, really. I mean, there's you can be really in or just having minor things with it, right? So,
right,
I consider myself. I consider religious belief to be somewhat of a delusion because, in my mind, you're lying to yourself. Like, I don't mean to offend anyone, but that's just the way I kind of look at it. Because to me, it's all mythology. So, I can't see personally how anyone could believe that this particular God or higher power, or whatever, is no more mythological than all the ones that have followed. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because there's multiples.
Oh yeah, thousands of them, literally millions. In some cases. So.
Well, and that is a form of delusion. Like one guy when I was doing, and this is part of where my job changed. I used to go to these state hospitals for like 10 years and visit, and instead of doing therapy, like 10 hours of my work week was spent doing that. But there's one guy, he's very interesting. This guy can learn a language in like 2 months, but he can't. Yeah, but he can't step out of the psych hospital because he's so in his delusions. Half of his day, he sits in a room and he literally thinks he's going all over the country performing surgeries. Hey, he's happy. So,
and that's not really a bad thing because in his mind he's helping people, and I can't knock.
And he studied the Quran one time, and so his But then sometimes he'd say he'd want to leave and he'd want to get into like this polyamorous. It's been too long since I studied sexuality. He wanted to get into a polyamorous thing with like John Denver and a couple of other people, and then a few women, and just have this big thing of love in his house.
I'm assuming he meant when John Denver was still alive.
Oh, he probably thought he was. It wasn't that name. I can't remember. Oh, but to him, and then he was Barack Obama for a while, and now he's just himself the president. He doesn't say the other name, which is interesting.
Yeah, that is kind of weird.
Yeah, because he's not narcissistic enough, I guess. But anyway, he says he used to say he was Barack Obama, but now he says, I am the president. And I think he knows his name, but he's always happy. Just the sad thing is, and some people like that can function in society, but this guy has diabetic neuropathy, and he thinks it's literally like angles coming at his feet, so he can't walk half the time.
Wow.
So there is
wow. I never heard of that.
There's some sadness to his delusions, and the sad thing is that, once he got his blood sugars went out, he was living like in housing, and we were taking. I mean, what we do is that's the thing I like about working with severely mentally ill, at least in my agency, is that we want people to be as independent as possible.
Sure.
But then some people, like if somebody has a low IQ, they need to have somebody around in case there's a fire alarm. But people need to have all the freedom, and it doesn't matter what their delusions are. People can live out there, except his limits him from actually going out and taking care of himself and cooking his food. So he just lives in this institution, but I don't think he even realizes he's there half the time.
So I guess he's taken care of by the staff there and stuff like that.
Right. Which is, I mean, even though, and like I said, we've had problems for years. Years ago, we had this guy named Ronald Reagan, and he just dumped. I mean, we had institutions where people were like put in there. Like, this is interesting. So in Indiana, about 45 years ago, before the Reagan days, like if I didn't like somebody, I could just call the cops and say they're crazy, and then they would pay me $50 and they'd put them in the state hospital and just institutionalize them. This place called Central State. And so then they emptied it out. But what they said was, well, people deserve the right to be on their own, but it costs a lot of money to help people live on their own and be free. So they limited that money because a lot of our money had to go to wars because that's more profitable for the country.
Oh, yeah.
So a lot of that money for community mental health was spent on, Vietnam, et cetera, et cetera. Now, he was after Vietnam, but yeah, everything's been, I mean, I'm totally anti-war.
I am as well.
Oh, yeah, it's just, and that's scary. Yeah. Go ahead.
Let me actually rephrase that. I'm against war generally, but if there is some asshole dictator that's trying to take over some little country, I'm not against someone else going in there and stopping them.
Right. But you got to make sure. The problem now is that like this whole thing with like Syria. Oh, you'll love what that's about. It's all about Zionism, which is all about religion, which is actually, it's like they took over. It's not the true Judaism. Like true Judaism people are kind of like, we live and let live. So these people took over it and took over the whole country. And it's all about the oil in the Golan Heights and making the money on that. And that's what we should.
I lived there.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, I lived in Israel for a couple of years when I did grade 11 and 12 over there. I was raised Jewish, so Zionism is more about Israel itself and having the nation and stuff.
Right. Because they believe, which is another religious. No wonder you're an atheist. Oh my God. I mean, this thing.
It was one of the many, many factors that made
it's very, very, very evil. Yeah. So were you an Israeli citizen or?
No, I was offered to be able to join the military, which I went and did the boot camp, and then they offered me citizenship, plus then I'd have to stay for another 3 years and do my service, because it's mandatory. If you're a citizen, you do 3 years in the military, and then once you leave after your 3-year tour, Now you have to come back every year for the rest of your life for 2 weeks. So
Really?
yeah, and then even if you live in the U.S., you got to go back and serve 2 weeks every year.
What?
So my parents were like, nope, nope, come home. So,
That's good. Yeah, I listened to an interview with this guy over there. It's called The General's Son. His father was a general in the Israeli military. And he talked
yeah,
about how when he was in there, that they would like tell them to be brutal to all the Palestinians. He's like, whoa.
yeah,
Yeah, it was really, I didn't know about the 2 weeks after. Well, he's still a citizen over there, but I guess the good thing is he comes and he's blowing the whistle, but nobody will listen to him because we all believe that, it's because of Assad and he's this dictator. And if you go talk to him, then suddenly you're like we have this person, Tulsi Gabbard, and she's like the one anti-war candidate who was actually in the military, and she's trying to, but then they try to just hit her and say, well, you talk to this dictator. Well, maybe you need to talk to him and get him to knock it off. But yeah, but it's there's a lot of propaganda. That's the problem. But I agree that if there's a dictator, yeah, like I take it you're not a big Netanyahu fan. So.
Not really.
Well,
I mean, some of his ideas, like when he talks to with their technology, when he's going on about how Israeli technology improves other people's technology, they take it and they can improve it. Like, for example, when I was there, they took the version of the F-16 fighter jet and they revamped it and redesigned it and made it like 10 times better than an F-16 kind of thing. So he likes to go on about that, and I'm all about advancements in technology, so I can agree with him on sort of certain things like that. But the way he is doing things over there and the way they treat the Palestinians, which I think is pretty abhorrent. So
yeah.
But there are the crazy ass Palestinian members of like groups like Hamas that are also just as bad. So
right, I've heard that too.
It's always the innocent people though that take it that end up the ones being hurt, right? Well, these other fanatic whack jobs are going at each other. So
and that's where the violence is. It's kind of like either like Israel is all pure and wonderful, and then the Palestinians are all horrible, or the Palestinians are all pure and wonderful. And I mean, there's good and bad in all of it.
Oh man, that chunk of real estate has been at war with somebody, some version of somebody who swears that their God says is their land for thousands of years. So why should it be any different today?
Yeah, I've been studying religious history this year. Disgusting. It's like I just can't even read it. It's been like we got like 10 more weeks. It's like I can't deal with any more of this, and that's part of the deal is just murdering and murder. And yes, religions have been like murdering for centuries, starting
Sure, that's what I said. My expression is killing in the name of, right?
Exactly, and they would have the armies like stand up for and that's what's going on with the whole Zionism thing, which I think that's fascinating that you were actually over there. I visited once when I was like 15, but I was just a kid. And just kind of.
That's when I was there, 16, 17, 18 years old. So.
Yeah, this was like in the 70s, and we went because I was in Germany. My dad was stationed in Germany for like my 4 years of high school, and my parents like to travel everywhere. So we went there. We went to Russia when it was in the communist thing. I'd like to go back because I've heard it's a lot better.
Yeah, well, they got rid of all the crazy people that were in charge. So
yeah,
communism over there. Now they got Putin, who's I think is also kind of crazy, but he's I still don't really know what the hell to make of that guy, because one day you think he's a pretty cool guy, and the next day it's like he's a nut bar.
Well, he's popular because when the United States looted them in the 90s, like if you ever read the Harvard Boys Do Russia, when they were all over there attacking and stealing all the money and stealing all their vouchers, he kicked out people, which is interesting. So now we have this Magnitsky Act, which is talk about propaganda. There's a movie out about it that's been banned. That's the best stuff to watch. We've got a lot of censorship now. Yeah. Because anything that does the truth about like the Ukraine and how we in the United States go and take over and do regime change and tell people that we're going to put our person in, you know.
Mhm.
And now it's
Oh, that's happened multiple times.
Yeah. I mean, there's just been a pattern of that for 40, 50 years. And every president that gets in, it's sad. At least you guys aren't doing that in Canada.
No, you're right. No.
And you have health insurance there too, don't you? Yeah.
Yes, we do.
Is it pretty good?
Starkey said, "Oh yeah, yeah. Anything that I end up having to pay for myself over and above what the insurance always covers. Because if you get into a job, they'll pay at minimum 80%, right? And the company I work for, if you have to pay over and above with your dental or your medical, you can bring the receipts in, and they'll completely reimburse you for that too.
So it's kind of like, there's what everybody gets, and then they help you out even more if you're working for them.
Yeah. And if you're unemployed, you can still get what's called, what we have here is provincial. It's BC medical, and you're covered. If you end up at the hospital, you're covered. And well, that obviously comes out of taxpayer dollars, but yeah, it doesn't matter. If you have a job, even better. If you don't, you're still covered. Canada won't let you die, sort of thing.
Yeah, that's a good thing. That's really good.
I just wanted to point out something that Mrs. Snarky said, because I was saying, they have days where I think, just because Putin is kind of cool, and then the next day is like, fuck, he's just a nut bar, and she's like, yeah, he's not a good person, and I pretty much agree with that. He's really not. But he has those moments where he kind of looks like, he looks like a badass, or like he has that appearance, but we all really know that he's kind of a jerk. So
I think, well, not any worse than what we got. He's probably better than what we have. But
I don't know, man. It's like half of one, half dozen one, six of the other.
Exactly. Yeah, we've had
two peas in a pod, really.
Except who's got the more power?
Well, I would say probably Trump.
Yeah.
It seems to be that the U.S. president is always the biggest, most known,
right. So, did you know that? Yeah, but Jared Kushner did you know that when Jared Kushner was a teenager, Netanyahu came to his house, and like he would sleep on the couch and Netanyahu would sleep in his bed. So
really?
he and Trump are like best. See, while all this is going on about the collusion thing, Trump is signing a thing saying that Israel has the right to the Golan Heights. And they're not talking about that. You don't want to talk about
no.
It. They're all talking about this conspiracy theory that they came up with for, because the media is making a ton of money off this, where they can sit and scream about Russia. Yeah. Not saying that there's not problems there, but I'm not going to think that their country's any better than theirs. So.
No. Well, journalism isn't what it used to be. That's for sure.
Oh, no, it's off.
Rather than digging out the actual truth, they want to put their own biased spin on what they think the truth is. And
which fascinated me because that's exactly what happened when I was in the way. Is I mean, all the same techniques that they use to convince people that, one person's better than the other. Like you've got, since our election, and it really shows since our election, you've got some people that literally go onto 4chan to listen to things about that they think are messages from somebody that knows Trump and that he's like a god to them. And then you've got other people who are just like, they're not looking critically. They're just like, we hate Trump. And they're not looking at the fact that he's just a symptom of the problem. Mm-hmm. He's not, I mean, you got horrible policies, but it's like you're bypassing all the horrible things if you just like do that. Because he's going to be out of here in 2 to 6 years, depending on what happens in the election. And,
it's going to be interesting.
All the same corrupt people that are causing all these problems are still going to be there running everything.
I had no idea 4chan was still a thing.
Oh, yeah.
It's been around forever, man.
As I never got into it, but I just heard about that. And it's some anonymous source. It's like, trust Trump. And so all these people are wandering around thinking that he's the greatest thing. Then you've got people that they're just so angry. And I'm not saying he's not horrible, but I mean, critical thinking's out the window. Yeah. Rachel Maddow's like crying because of this whole latest thing about The Mueller report, which, by the way, Mueller is also the weapons of mass destruction guy. He's
right.
the guy that convinced us all that Iraq had all these weapons, so I don't trust him either. Yeah.
Insects are cool. Just showed up. Hello. Sorry.
Oh, so you got people like texting on. Oh, that's right, on the YouTube.
Well, yeah. See, basically, I have the little chat going on. So there's people that pop in and out.
That's cool.
And these are often people that join me in my after parties.
Cool.
Because usually when I do an interview, I follow with an after party and we go for an hour and a bit more.
Wow.
Just talking about stuff. If you're interested, you're not obligated to do it, but if you're interested in meeting a couple other people and discussing a little bit more about this sort of thing, you're welcome to do so.
That sounds fun. And you can come on after anybody's thing, or like,
yeah. Like once I've had an interview with you, you're always now more than welcome to jump into any of my after parties that I have with the people that I chat with. So, and I usually get at least 3 or 4 people that come in and we shoot the shit for a little while, and all kinds of things get brought up. So it's always a lot of fun to see what we end up talking about.
Yeah, I've watched a little bit of it. It's just been so much going on. Like my job has been going through. It's been like 2 months of just so much going on.
Mm-hmm.
Like I just had everything change, and then So eventually, when I get more energy, I'll try to get in on some more of those. Those will be fun.
Yeah, they are. They mostly are. Yeah, Insect Close says I'm usually there. Yeah, she's become relatively recent furniture in my after parties.
Which one is that?
Insects are cool. Her name's Adriana.
Oh,
she's an entomologist, actually.
Like Kinsey. Did you know that?
Who's
Kinsey's a big sex think guy from actually, because I live in Indiana, and in Bloomington, Indiana, there was this guy named Alfred Kinsey. He's been gone a while, but he was an entomologist, and he started saying, I want to study sexuality. So he went out and he studied, and he showed, like, he was one of the first people to show that, that homosexuality wasn't much different from heterosexuality. And he just, he's got like a book about sexuality in the male, sexuality in the female. I don't know. And now they have the Kinsey Institute, which is.
How do you make the leap, though, from being an entomologist to sexuality? That's kind of.
He did. Well, he was trying to figure out what he was, because I think he's the one with the Kinsey scale. Like a 0 is like kind of like me, never been interested in women, just always liked guys. And then a 7 is kind of like the women that couldn't even think of being interested in guys. And then your bisexual people are like 3 or 4 in the middle. And so he's the one that came up with but he did, like, there's a movie about him.
Oh, like a scale kind of thing.
Yeah, he came up with the whole scale on sexuality and books. And now they still do a lot of studies, because a lot of his, like, it was in the 50s, and they really, like, you're supposed to have samples and all that. So they go back, and they found out that actually now they're backing it up with actual research with decent, which is hard in social service research, but they've been doing better research to show pretty much he was on the right track. Because he was like, hey, it doesn't matter if you're gay or straight and all that. And so he was obviously not liked. And there's a lot of demonization on him. But he had some issues. Yeah, but there was I got the movie.
We all do.
No kidding.
We all have our issues, right? Best thing we can do is just try to be, try to work our way through our issues and try to be the best that we can be. That's all we can do.
Exactly. Like this reporter that I like to follow, that he works for us, because the thing is, in the United States, if you're like on RT or Sputnik, you'll notice that a lot of the real good people are now working for like the radio station, because what they do is, and this, I don't think Putin has anything to do with it. They say, be accurate in your journalism. We don't care what you say. So you could get on Russia radio and say you hate Putin and he's a horrible stuff, and nobody's going to say anything. Or you can get on there, except if you have inaccurate things, they're kind of going to say, go back and do your research.
Sure, and I would too.
Exactly. So this one guy says, he's talking about, maybe I'd run for president, but it would never work because he used to be an erotic photographer. So then I'm on there going, well, maybe I should go back to Kinsey and see if any of your photography's up. Because they have erotica, which is like where you take pictures. It's like a higher level than porn. And then you've got the high level, like I've watched a lot of the education.
Erotica is sexy, but it still carries some mystery with it, right? Whereas porn, it's all out in your face. So
yeah, porn's very boring.
There's no mystery involved in porn.
But then
whereas erotica could be artful.
Oh yeah, so he was like a big photographer and he did all that stuff. He's going, but you see, in our country, if that comes up, they like judge you and like there's one person. There's a person running for president and she gets on there and she says, I was raised conservative, and she tells her deconversion story, and they go, no, she's lying. Like they don't believe you can be deconverted if you're like once a victim. And I totally disagree with that. Because
I've interviewed many. So
exactly. I mean, I just hate to think where I'd be if I hadn't gone through my own deconversion, because it's black and white thinking. It's believing what everybody else tells you. And it's just, there's no freedom in it.
That's right. So, there's really, really very few things in the world, or in the universe for that matter, that are black and white. Everything else is pretty much full of nuance. So there are few things that we would consider to be, something is either true or it's not. There's no middle ground, right? Like that's sort of a black and white. But everything else has got nuance and stuff like that.
Exactly. And that's what's nice about life. I enjoy the nuance.
Yeah, sure.
It's a lot more fun.
That's what brings variety to stuff too, is all that nuance.
Yeah. That's so when I was doing this Kinsey thing, this was interesting. One thing I did is I went to this class called Sexual Attitude Reassessment. And what they do, and I never got into, like, I'm not a sexologist, and like after I graduated, I do more trauma than that. But you go for 3 days, and there's a lot of stuff. It's not exactly porn. It's more like educational. Like they have photos of people that are handicapped and how they have sex. And I mean, and you actually see it. And you have like the BDSM people, and you see how they do, all of that. And the idea behind it is not to be disgusted by any of it. So if I have a client and they come and they say, I feel really terrible, and they start describing vividly something that happened, I've probably watched it and desensitized myself to it. And like one guy was really upset because he watched, which was funny because they had the one where they had 2 gay guys having sex, and he was repulsed by it because he's a straight guy. And he's like, because he's not desensitized. He's not attracted to males. And so he thought it looked, and he's like, oh no, am I a bigot now? And it's like, no, you just have not seen the sex. So when he watched it that way, it doesn't disgust him to look at that.
Right. Because I don't go out of my way to rent gay porn or anything like that because I'm heterosexual. So that kind of thing doesn't turn me on. But I'm not going to go ew and hide behind the couch if there's a scene. And like, for example, the American Gods TV show, there's quite a bit of that. But I wasn't like, ew. I was just like, okay. Well,
yeah. And that's the thing, because a long time ago I was that way about the women, but it was interesting when I watched it, because that guy was disgusted, and I had told this other gal in there, I said, just watch it, it's really hot. And I mean, we were like turned on because there's like 2 guys. It's like, whoa. And then when I watched the lesbian one, it was totally not sexual to me. It was just like, oh my God, they're free to lay there with each other, and they're not going to get arrested for sodomy, and they can express their sexuality. And it was totally not sexual to me. It was more like a beautiful thing for me to see. And that's the idea behind being desensitized. Like the goal would be like for a male therapist to be able to watch 2 guys and just think, well, that's great that they can express themselves, even if it's not their thing.
Yeah, that's actually a really good way I think you put it there. It's something that's beautiful, even if it's not something you're attracted to. You can still see the beauty within it, because love is love.
Absolutely. Yeah, and exactly. So, yeah, I came a long ways from. Actually,
sounds like it.
Our group, though, they were kind of into having a lot of sex. Unlike like the Jehovah's Witnesses, because I've studied them a lot because I've had clients in that. And so, and that's part of what I want to do in educating is like, after I've built an audience for a while, just kind of see what can I do to help people. Because like in the Jehovah Witness community, I'm just blown away by like a lot of these advocates. Like there's a guy named John Cedars. Have you seen his stuff?
I have, yes.
Amazing work. Like he shows you, like, watch this, and he shows you all the propaganda in it.
Mm-hmm.
But and I used to think, well, I want to do that with Away, but there's like nobody left. And then I realized as a therapist, I can look at any of these groups and show how it's psychologically unhealthy. And having been in one, and I can also talk about, I know what it's like to be brainwashed, and I know what it's like to get out of it. And the process is the same. And I've talked to several people, and they're like, there's a lot of people doing good work, but there's not a lot of therapists out there going, look at this, and this is because of, and explain it from psychology instead of trying to like tell somebody what to do.
Sure.
Because psychology is all about, you decide. And which is really the best way to deconvert somebody, is use something that's healthy psychology.
Sure. I think including better critical thinking skills coupled with that works really well.
Yeah, I kind of got into that at work because, well, because some people, the problem is in my field, we're like a feeling type field. And so you get people that maybe they're like, if you're a good therapist, you've got to use critical thinking. But let's say you're a so-so therapist, but you're a real kind person, then they kind of promote you up. And then when decisions need to be made, you want everybody to agree. And in management, that doesn't always work.
No.
You get this
fairly rare.
Yeah, so like when I went to my first EMDR thing and I was set free, and one of my things I said was, well, fuck my company. And somebody overheard it, and they violated my confidentiality and went to administration and said that I was not talking about how great my job was. And literally, like, they pulled my boss out and all that. And I'm like, okay, well, first of all, I was very angry because when I said it, it really like processed out where I no longer thought that it's like I can get a job anywhere. So I said, first of all, why is that person violating my confidentiality? And then I said, well, screw you. And I took because there were 2 parts in the training, and I went somewhere with other people to do the second part. And then I got my job changed because I realized my part was I was just trying to kiss up in the organization, talking to, and I really want to be a good therapist and teach other people and help people in this way using my experience instead of just kissing up and sitting there and being an administrator. And I don't want to do that. It's not.
Well, that's admirable, though. I mean, wanting to help people is I think an admirable thing.
Yeah, and another thing is, and this is like this business course that I took from this guy it was interesting. He said, if you can teach somebody like what we do, like, a lot of education, things like the stuff that John Cedars does is great and it's free. But if like there was a course where you go for something specific and somebody can look at it for an hour and solve a huge problem, well, then it's worth $9.99 or whatever.
Yeah, which really isn't going to break anyone's bank.
Right, and you're not ripping people. Yeah, and you're doing something specific for them. But then I know there's Patreon too, like that.
Yeah.
I might start with that because I just want to.
Not a bad idea.
Because I know what worked for me, but if I'm going to help other people, I want to know what their needs are.
Sure. Yeah, you can't help them if you don't. So
kind of like what you do, you get these things going and you get all the conversations going and you get to know people. And I think what you're doing, and are you monetized?
No.
On YouTube?
One thing people don't realize about me is I am not in any way monetarily motivated. I do things because I want to, because I think it might help people. I don't care if I make money. I've got a good job. I get paid well. Of course, I could always make more. That'd be great. But so I'm not motivated by money to do things. I'm always just because I want to. Because if I feel that I can help people or have some kind of an impact, then I'm going to do what I want to do.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, yeah. Because if I made a lot of money, I'd be doing everything for free. Unfortunately, I'm a
Yeah, me
therapist.
too.
But I mean, yeah, but I mean, if I made like if I won the lottery, I would probably like put a lot of money into like healthcare reform in our country, and trying to get ways to get things done to help people. Because you can
Yeah,
only,
absolutely.
like in our country, they say if you make over like 70 a year, you really don't need the extra money. Unless you're an
Well,
elite.
if that's the case, if you do make extra money, then put that money to good use,
Exactly.
but helping others, right? And I
Exactly.
do that. I do that quite a bit, actually. So
That's great. That's awesome.
yeah, well, it's worth it because I know that. I mean, I also do the blood donation thing, which you probably know by now.
Oh, I
And
saw that.
it's
Yeah.
yeah, so that's what it's about, man. Is trying to make our not just mine, but other people's existence on this planet, because you only get one go around. So let's try and make it the best we can for everybody, right? And vicariously, it comes back to you, sort of, because of what you do. That almost sounds
Yeah.
selfish, but ultimately, I have to share this world with other human beings. So I'm going to be the best that I can be, so that it inspires others to do the same thing.
Exactly. Exactly.
So yeah.
Sounds good.
Well, we've come up on our hour here, and I generally
Wow.
like to go. I know it goes by pretty quick
I've
sometimes.
enjoyed this. Yeah.
Yeah, I've very much enjoyed our chat. We did the bit of the religious bit at the beginning, and then we got into other things, which I thought was
The
quite
religion.
interesting.
And
Yeah,
religion's so,
I hear you. I hear you. I'm with you there.
yeah, it's just so, yeah. And I mean, and I was even like, I wasn't feeling the best tonight, but I'm like, I already copped out once. So,
Hey, if you needed to still delay this for another week or so, I would have been fine doing that. I don't want people to feel like they're pressured to have to come on here. So I want
absolutely.
you to be in the best mood, uh, be your best when you come on.
Right,
But you
right.
did fine. You did fine.
Well,
You handled
thanks.
yourself right. Yeah, it was great.
Actually,
Great
and I'm
chatting
an
with you.
extrovert, so actually talking helps me feel a little better.
That's good.
I
That's
just I
good.
had some vertigo and some stuff last night, and I was like, ugh. Now, and
Ooh,
work,
I've been
I'm not
there.
real busy at work yet because I don't have my client caseload up. If I'd have done that all day, I might have been ready to just rest. But I get actually energized talking to people. So
Well, there you go. I hope our little chat kind of gave you a
oh,
little bit of extra
wonderful.
boost.
Absolutely.
And do you think you might be down to hang out for a little bit longer?
Sure, sure. It sounds
Some other
good.
folks. What I'll do is I'll shut this one down to make it
Okay.
its usual hour, and then I'll send you a fresh link for another quick hangout that we'll have afterwards.
Sounds
So
great.
thank you very, very much. Is it okay if I use your name?
Yes, Lydia is my name. Yeah.
Right. I can actually see it in your Google Hangout thing.
I
So
think
I
yeah,
just
because
wanted to make sure.
I have two Twitters because one gets kind of political and I don't want to get political on my living free thing. Because
Right.
just because we disagree politically, there's so much propaganda out there.
Oh yeah.
It's kind of like, it's kind of like if I was going to try to deconvert a Jehovah's Witness, I'm not going to go in and say, you're wrong. I want to I want to like go
Never
in.
the good way.
No, because then that's just going to drive them deeper. And then one day
Yeah.
they may need a blood transfusion and they may die because they didn't get out. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. You know
Oh,
what? That's one of the biggest things that bugs me about that.
oh,
But anyway,
yeah. Yeah, it's pretty bad. It's bad.
yeah, it is. That's to me is horrible. But
Yeah.
anyway, thank you very much for
Well,
sitting
thank
through an
you.
hour with me.
All
And
right.
thanks everyone for tuning in and hanging out with us. We are going to do an after party for a bit. I can go for about an hour tonight, but I do have to head out and meet a friend of mine. We're going to go see a movie in a little while. So
Sounds like a
finally
plan.
going
All
to see
right.
Captain Marvel finally.
I got to get my dogs in control in between here.
All right. Yeah, I'm going to be about 5 to 10 minutes
Okay.
anyways, because I have to go and swap my laundry load and stuff like that. So
All right. Sounds like
all
a
right.
plan. All right. Thanks.
All right. Thanks, everybody. And remember what I always say at the end of these, it's called faith because it's not knowledge. We'll see you guys next time.
There